So it's game week now against Kansas Jayhawks and Fresno State. And normally this is when a person would talk about depth chart, positions, and so forth. But I'm really not going to do that. I don't really have the time to do that this week. And there are people who are way better at this point than me. I would strongly suggest you going to the likes of Jackson Moore on barkboard.com to really get that kind of information about the depth, the starters, positions, and so forth. Instead, I'm going to talk about what this game can mean for a Fresno State and the rebuilding pack. Obviously, Fresno State is playing a Kansas team that is in the Big 12. Historically, you would expect, based on overall results, a Fresno State to beat a Kansas. In this day and age of transfer portal, NIL, and so forth, that's no longer guaranteed, which is one reason I'm really not going to make a prediction because we don't know what we're going to get from Fresno State. But that doesn't mean the opportunity is not there for the Bulldogs to make a statement for themselves and for the rebuilding pack. First and foremost, during this week 0 matchup, there's virtually nothing else on at that time slot at 3:30 Fresno time. All right, you've got Farmageddon and Island at 9 o'clock on ESPN. I think you've got Hawaii and hosting Stanford on CBS an hour later at 4:30 Fresno time. You got UNLV playing somebody, and that's on national TV. And I think the only other game left is, Sam Houston in Western Kentucky on CBS Sports Network. So the Bulldogs are going to have the entire college football fan base across the country if watching this game. There won't be many other options on. And I really can't remember the last time that has happened for Fresno State. They have played on week zeros before, but never in a situation like this where they can make such a good impression for themselves. All right, if the Bulldogs beat a Kansas, they automatically become the team that has the initial start to be that non-P4 champion in the playoffs if they win the Mountain West. Right, that goes without saying. But the only other team that have such an opportunity in my mind, based on top of my head, would be Boise at Notre Dame later in the year. But if the Bulldogs beat Kansas on Big Fox, which everybody can get, they'll be the top trending topic on sports Twitter. Everybody will be talking about the Bulldogs. And it's a team they can beat. It's not like when you go to Michigan or USC or where you know the Bulldogs. It would be a massive upset if they pull that off. It is certainly conceivable. And you can have an entire broadcast on Fox talking about things like, the Green V, Pat Hill, Jeff Tedford, the Carl Burford, and so forth in front of the entire country. So this is a massive opportunity Fresno State does not usually get. All right? And I also want to bring up briefly the rebuilding pack. We've seen all, since really last year, the comparisons from the pack, Big 12, ACC, and so forth. If the Bulldogs beat a Big 12 team, it would help add the legitimacy that they are at the same level as a Big 12. And I believe they are. I believe right now, pound for pound, the Pac and Big 12 are more or less the same. The ACC has schools like Florida State, Miami, Duke, North Carolina basketball that kind of puts them above those other two conferences pound for pound. But, Kansas Big 12 fans led by a few Kansas burners have been against that. They've been saying, no way, you're not the same as us. A Bulldog victory over the Kansas Jayhawks would add some legitimacy to viewing the Pac as a power league. Now, would it be the same as like saying Boise beat Notre Dame or, no, it wouldn't. But let's say our league teams pull off upsets that are possible. San Diego State, for example, plays Cal later in the year. All right? Let's say the Aztecs beat the Bears, all right? Let's say that, there's another other examples I can't really think of on top of my head. But yes, there are certainly numerous opportunities for the rebuilding pack teams to pull off upsets and starts with Fresno State. That's what really this game means. A national audience for the Bulldogs. Everybody can watch you along with a rebuilding legitimacy. Now, the Bulldogs are also going to play, Oregon State a couple weeks ago. That's going to be seen as a big matchup. I'll talk about that later. You got Georgia Southern again, but that's going to be later, but that'll be on FS. People can watch that. This game really is something that can be attention grabber if the Bulldogs win. All right, so we'll see what happens this Saturday. It's 3:30 Fresno time. Let's show the nation what we're made of, Bulldogs. Let's do this.